Hello everyone, I'm going to talk to you about the third boss in Terra Sidiana Springs, known as Lei Shi, or as I know, Duckface, one of the most annoying bosses ever. But let's get straight to it. This is a 2-tank fight with 2 to 3 healers or 5 to 6 DPS. We will be able to see how many healers and DPS we use when we eventually get to this boss, and then we can judge if we need a little bit more of one or the other. The boss also has a 10-minute enrage. Right, just 2 notes before I go into the general tactics and the abilities. First is for the tanks. Tanks, remember that Lei Shi only uses magical damage, which means that some of your cooldowns won't be as useful, so just make sure to take care and to make sure you're mitigating the damage properly. Remember as well that the adds that spawn in the fight use physical damage, so of course just remembering that you have to mitigate against both at different times. The second note is that every 10% loss, the boss will gain an 8% attack speed bonus. Right, so I'll go on to the abilities, and the first ability I'm going to talk about is Spray. This is the tank switch ability. Basically, Spray will be sprayed on the active tank, and when that active tank gets to 10 stacks, they will swap. Spray is a mini AoE ability, so what you need to make sure that no one else is near the tanks, because if you're near, you'll get it on you as well, which means that you'll be taking more damage, because Spray, the debuff of Spray is that it will build up, and the more it builds up, the more damage you take. That's why the tanks need to swap at 10. The only problem with this is that the boss will gain attack speed every 10%. So even though it starts off as 10 stacks, it won't be near the end. And this is something that we'll need to judge ourselves, depending on what tanks will be raiding at the time and what else will be happening. So tanks, I need to hear you on vent, calling out and discussing when you think you need to swap. The next thing is that every 20% lost, we'll have an add phase, which is where when we have ads spawn, like in Raid Finder. At 80% and 60%, we will have 3 ads spawn, and at 40 and 20%, we will have a 4 ads spawn. With this, in the raid at the time, you will be given CC assignments, which will be whoever's in the raid and see who can CC these targets will have as they're quite easy to CC, will probably have a lot of choice. This is because, 1, they do hit quite hard, and 2, we want to make it as easy for the tanks as possible, because they still have to switch, because even though Lei Shi is bubbled in the middle, Lei Shi will still be spraying the tanks, the active tank. So it would be easier for the active tank to switch between one ad and the boss, because they'll still have to tank swap, than having all of them and they will get annihilated. The problem with this fight is now, the other 2 abilities, we have no indication when they're going to happen and which order they will happen in. So it is tricky for us to use our cooldowns and to use heroism, which is why this fight can end up seeming so long. The first one I'm going to talk about is Hide. Now, with Hide, as we all know, the boss will hide, and we have to find this boss using AoE damage. In the raid, you will be given a side, and basically people will run about in the location that they're given to find the boss. Once we find the boss, everyone will go towards where the boss is, like in Raid Finder, and AoE the boss until Lei Shi reappears. The next one is Getaway. Now, as we know, from Raid Finder, Getaway is the boss will teleport into the middle of the room and then push us all away. We need to treat this like the last 20% of Blade Lord Tyak, because it is quite a bit of damage. People need to be making sure they're using their own damage cooldowns as well to keep themselves alive. Note that if you run against the wind, you will take half damage. But you can still cast while moving backwards. If you are a healer and you need to heal, then stop running forwards and move backwards, and you can do it. It just means you're taking more damage. This is a good time for people to use their cooldowns, because it's the only time I can definitely say the boss is going to be there for 4% or 30 seconds. So just making sure that if you've got a cooldown, especially that's going to do pure damage to the boss, as it's going to be quite difficult for us to do pure damage and get the 4% done, then that's the best option we've got. As I say, it's quite a simple fight. It's just really balancing out your cooldowns, making sure that we CC and the tanks don't die, make sure it's just the tanks getting used to when to swap on Spray. There's not a lot to it. It's quite boring, but quite frustrating as well, as Lei Shi can hide, get away, and do whatever the hell she likes. So that's the tactics for this one, there isn't really any tactics. I am sorry, this is just telling you what the boss does, and there will be assignments in the raid for CCs And really all we've got to do is make sure the tanks are swapping, do as much damage as we can and kill it as fast as possible. Thank you for that, guys. See you